Vitrani, commissaire au Palais de Tokyo et commissaire indépendant également, qui fait dériver comme ça l'art urbain et l'art contemporain. Voilà, je vous souhaite une très bonne conversation et je suis sûre que ça va être très productif.
Merci à toi, Élodie. Peut-être juste quelques mots en français avant qu'on débute. Un grand merci à toi, Élodie, un grand merci à Agnès B, un grand merci à toi, Lénie. Je propose qu'on fasse une grande ovation à Futura et à Agnès B de nous réunir ce soir.
C'est moi. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Obviously, I want to thank Agnès for being such an important individual in my life, and really, I could say, got me back into painting in the late '80s when that earlier period, though it was amazing. 81, 82, 80, also can't forget 80. But later, after the birth of my son in 1984, life got real. People were no longer interested in what we were doing. Other things were happening and we were no longer relevant. So I very much appreciate Agnès as a patron, friend, just such a beautiful human being. So I want to acknowledge her and what she's done with her passion, not just for my work, but has been a supporter, I feel, of the community at large, but most specifically, the younger movement and the energy and just a kind of, she's like an angel. So that being said, I'm so honored to be here and grateful for her support. And Hugo, thank you for doing this with me. As you all may know, Hugo's at the Palais and he just put on an incredible show of RER C, another one of my contemporaries, which always makes me feel blessed to be amongst the living, which is why it's good to see you. You're all here with me. But once again, it's through Agnès', I guess she was really into my work, beyond helping an artist out, which is grateful. But generally, that's a short-term thing from the people who are supporting you or investing whatever they're doing to help you with your creative process. But she stuck it out, and test of time. I recently did a book, my monogram, if you will, and I had some people speaking, and she wrote some very kind words. So once again, I'm just, she's not technically old enough to be my mom. She would have been like 13, so that wouldn't have been good, but she's like a mom in a sense. I lost mine 50 years ago, actually this year, so was never looking for a mother, but it's kind of cool when you run up on someone that could be that person, perhaps it could be like missing in your life. So it's beyond just her as a wonderful human being, but it's like maybe she filled a mom thing for me that was amazing and helpful. Just whatever.
Maybe just to say that your first exhibition in Paris with Agnès B was the 1st June, 35 years ago, almost. In
Amazing.
2 weeks it will be 35 years ago.
Okay.
And we just walked together.
What, Galerie du Jour?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we just worked together in the show, actually, and you rediscovered some pieces you didn't saw since so many years. Just to start quickly, and then I will do a track now, what we call in English a trap. I would like to know what you feel.
My impressions of the work?
Yeah.
Well, of course, I haven't seen, I've seen images. I most recently had this painting here. Agnès was kind enough to loan it to me, as well as another piece or two for an exhibition I recently had at the Bronx Museum in New York City. So once again, not just as a patron, friend, collector, kind of you know, gatekeeper, guardian, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy type of vibe with her, right? She's guarding my stuff in some way, and it is galactic in an abstraction point of view. But yeah, the early work, it speaks to me. It's all I see the foundations of everything, you know, like, but physically seeing the work is always the most impressive. Like, you know, I've seen the piece, I'm familiar with it, whether it's published or whatever, but to physically see it after 30 years, it's pretty cool, because some of it I'd be critical of, like, oh yeah, okay, I fucked that up, and something I'm like, wow, okay, I see what I was trying to do, and it's not chronological, but you are walking through time a bit also, so it's like retracing my steps. Some were perhaps moved me in the right direction, some creatively maybe didn't, you know, but some people say like failure is not an option. I mean, I'm not in such a critical industry, so for me failure is a possibility, but I can deal with it, you know, it's not gonna shake me from continuing, you know, whatever, the plan.
So you were talking about the gatekeeper of the galaxy, and I wanted to ask you something, because you came from the future, we all know that, and someone just arrived from the past, it's Donald Trump, and I just wanted to start with, as I just told you, Trakna. It's just, you know, that many progressive terms have been cancelled and forbidden actually the last month, and because you come from a political world, a political practice also, where the words are the World Wide Web. They are really important as a graffiti guy, and I wanted to know just what is your position actually with this context. You know the famous quote, "Why poets in time of war?" How you feel as an artist in this particular context when these kind of words are not allowed anymore, like transgender, non-binary, they, them, pregnant, anti-racism, privilege, inclusion, equity, and others. I just want to know, you as a graffiti artist from the past, as an artist who is writing the words, who is writing the letters, who did things about illegality, progressive way to think about the art outside of the museum, the institutions, how you feel today?
Well, that's a very deep question, Hugo. Well, I mean, I'm angered with all of this, I don't want to say like crackdown, but this new regime we see, you know, and, unfortunately, I think I'm a bit too old to be in the fight. However, I'm talking to people as well who are, like, say, more like out there on the street and could have some visibility with this messaging, whatever the message is going to be. But I think whatever exists, whatever era life existed, there was going to be some levels of control and power, and there were going to be those who, you know, weren't included in that program. And somehow it all seemed to have found its way to this chair with us. I have faith in, you know, I don't want to call it normality, but some sense of community that we can all, you know, become a part of. I mean, it's a little bit like unrealistic, I get that, but right now, I mean, if I could be in the fight in some way, I would be helping financially, perhaps. That's how I could help. And I don't know if that's the correct answer for such a question, but as I said initially, I just think like, no, it's not, it's the people who are going to, you know, we're looking at work from 30, you know, and it's so easy for me to look back 30 years, 40 years, fucking 50 years, you know, as I mentioned, my mom's passing. But at the same time, young people have to start to think that way as well. And, you know, wow, I wish I had 40, 50 years on the front end of my life, right? Because many things can happen. Change can happen. I've seen it, you know. Now, things are happening, of course. I mean, it's a terrible situation. I'm just very much, you know, it's fucked up. And once again, you know, like on a local level, what I can do to affect people around me, people I love and care for, I'm gonna do, despite whatever. And yeah, my God, I hope like they don't come looking at our community and want to cancel people out or do whatever or arrest you for some fucking crime you committed half a century ago. Yeah, it's scary actually. You know, we're living in a fucking tyranny right now. So I don't have the answers on this one. We need a collective group to talk about that and find a way. But in the meantime, don't, you know, it's not like hope. Hope is not a plan, but, you know, have an idea. I keep saying that, like people should get an idea about what they're really trying to say, or I think you have to do something before you say something, but yeah, find a plan.
So
This is way off of what like I thought, but I like it. You know, we're just here. You know, it's people getting my opinion on shit. But
I was asking you because it's a really important question in the history of art. And it could be an argument to bring you back to Paris because, as you know, many of your friends are here and your fans. But also because you, in your start, in the beginning of your work, you were also really influenced and shocked by the universe piece of art. And maybe you can do the link with that the New York World's Fair in the 64 and 65 that you visited was made also to bring the people in another mood after the civil rights fights, after the Vietnam War. And I would love you to explain why this experience of this place, of this event, was important for you as a pop culture also, and maybe for the people who are here and maybe don't know about this universe sculptures, maybe you can describe it and say what still happened in your mind at this time faced with this piece and what stay in your pieces today of this experience.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's the easy one. Because that's part of the influence of my life, I think, as a ultimately creative person and pursued the direction I did. But it did begin with this event in New York called the World's Fair, and it was 1964, 1965, so let's just say 9, 10-year-old kid, you know, school, you know, young school level, but getting this exposure to the globe. And I was always already fascinated by geography, maps. There's certain things I was drawn to. Money, because it was beautiful design on foreign currency. Stamps were another direct connection graphically, design-wise. And I was a little kid, but I was thinking about that and like how that moved me. And the World's Fair, you speak of what's called the Unisphere. It's a giant metallic globe of the planet, and it does have some kind of rings around it. Did they become the atoms of my paintings in the future? Perhaps. My military experience on a nuclear, you know, whatever, aircraft carrier, or exposure to that word, the atomic symbolism of my youth when I used to get under a fucking table to avoid a nuclear, you know, it's like the ridiculousness of that kind of a storytelling to a little kid. Like that's gonna protect me and anyone else in a whatever radius of such an impact. You know, it's preposterous. So the atomic thing was weighing heavy. I'm just 10 now, you know what, I'll grow up to see Kubrick in 2001 and that'll change my whole thing and that will give me the name Futura 2000 and that'll be my vision creatively. But the World's Fair coupled with the military, the World's Fair was my architecture to the world and some awareness, you know, walking into a Japanese pavilion with you know, men in samurai kits and women in kimono, you know, the whole vibe was authentic and real. And that stimulated me because it's the only exposure up close I had other than going to museums, you know, and looking at like, you know, whatever mannequins or whatever creativity they had, you know, displaying these things. So it just touched me, you know, and the people were all crazy amazing. So that opened my door, and then the military, when I traveled, that really did it. So when I came back to contribute to the graffiti movement in the late 70s, I had all this, I don't want to say ammunition, bad word, but like equipment to do various things with, little bits of knowledge from different areas, and that I knew could help me, once I got back to the world, I guess. But I'm still a nomad. I'm still, they don't stamp passports anymore. It's not as cool, but I used to really, that was my thing. Like, I want to go places. I want to, I've seen it on TV. I've read books. I want to stand on the land and, meet the people, eat the food. I want to have the real experience. I love hearing someone's stories. They might stimulate me to go, but traveling, I think, is also part of my life experience. And a lot of it isn't stuff like this either. It's not like, oh, Futura, come do this, or you have an exhibition, A lot of my life I spent off the grid, if you will, like not pursuing this identity just to exist. But like, no, I have things I want to accomplish, or some own other vision other than this guy, and I need to do that without him. So I just go with me, and I have a great time. I can escape from him sometime, and I do that. It's actually harder to do now, but there were years of my life that I would do things like that. Just abandon my identity, almost, if you will, just because. Not like it's too extra, but it's not. I'm not that kind of person. It's like, that's not what moves my needle. It's like, it's wonderful. I'm so appreciative, but I don't live in this space of like me, and it gets to be too much, actually. So that's why I find a diversion in going around America and visiting every baseball stadium for 2 years back in 2008, 2009, just because I'm a baseball fan. Imagine your Premier Leagues or any football leagues, and you've seen every of the venues on the television, you know all the names of every team, and you're like, wow, I'm a real fan. You go to your guys' arena, but imagine going the whole circuit. So that's the kind of passion I had for a thing that I spent 2 years of my life where it wasn't about me exploring these experiences just because I'm future. You know what I mean? It's like, that doesn't work, actually. I do need that balance. Otherwise, I can't justify all the attention and whatever. It's too much, actually. I'm sure it blows people's minds, and I'm going to be 70 in November. Let's give it I'd like an applause at least for that. Thank you. Yeah. That's not my best accomplishment. That's my 2 kids, and a couple of paintings here or there, but surviving, being amongst the living, like I said, that's really what's up. That's the greatest gift, and I'm seemingly healthy, and I hope it lasts. I tell people, don't bet on me. I'll break 100. It's doable. So with that enthusiasm, and it's like, oh shit, I can. I see great work coming out of me. Last week. So it's like, it's there. I'm gonna make the best painting ever, but I haven't made it yet. So that's also a thing that I look forward to. And when I get there, I probably won't be satisfied. But for a moment, I will. For a moment, I'll be like, oh shit, that's pretty good. Yeah, let's stop right there. That's probably another problem too for a lot of artists. Like, wow, when do I really sign off on a painting? Like, when do I say, okay, that's it? A lot of times it's the signature sign off, but it could be more deeper. People are frustrated with the work, and it's like, ah. And then what happens too, everyone probably knows that, you go too far, you fuck it up. You don't want to admit it. People are like, yo, this shit is dope. You're like cross between reality and a fantasy. And so just to say, once again, failure's okay. You'll bounce back.
You just heard the voice, so you should say also big applause to Chou, Bordeaux, and Rocking Squad.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for being here for me. I love you. But no, excuse me, let me just put something in context also, first off. Here we are, Agnès B. I don't know if everyone knows or anyone knows, but my first time in this amazing city was 1981. I came with this group from the UK called The Clash. They brought me here. I was essentially their artist on stage while they performed. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, that European trip in '81. What I was wondering is, now I don't hook up with Agnès until the late '80s through Philippe Brie, my exhibition in New York, her once again just being an art collector and got a discerning eye and knows what she likes and is feeling the vibe from the street, if you will. But I can imagine that in 1981, when I came with The Clash, and she's so involved in like photography, literature, music, the arts, she probably would have caught wind of, you see what I'm saying? Like, so maybe even prior to her arrival with me, to me, she might have already heard about me in some sense. And even for me, I look back and I think like, wow, because every turn we make in life, of course, dictates the future. And it's these crossroads with people and, like moments in your life that are actually like super important. And The Clash, no doubt, they helped me a lot as a young artist. I was all of, in 1981 on that tour, I hadn't turned 26 yet, so but I had the brake train behind me. I had some ammunition, I'll use that word in this context, where I know Z would be proud. But it's just to say that by that moment when I was on the road, I was pretty cocky and confident, and I didn't want to let them down in terms of my performance or whatever I created, even though I just saw the work, one of the pieces I had made in a show in London a couple of years ago. And I was like, oh God, it's horrible. But that's way younger than this work, right? That was still like, it's not amateur hour, but I'm consciously fucking nervous up on stage behind these guys. Like, could you imagine? It was kind of like, even at 25, mentally, I was like, fuck, man, like, this is really intimidating, and trying to play it off like it wasn't affecting me, but yeah, so I think perhaps with Agnès's diversity of, whatever, just cultural awareness and being a person within that, that can mix with all of those quite seamlessly, she winds up being almost, like I say, like the perfect person to help me on my path. And, that's why I'm sort of, like I said, it's like it's a love for a mom, not in any weird way, but just like, that kind of person in your life that you love. And, honestly, that sounds weird too, because although I said that, I wouldn't want to be taking something from my mom. You know what I mean? Like, I would have a problem with that. It's like, what are you doing? You're like investing there. She don't pay for shit, kind of thing, right? So
it's another proof that you're coming from the future, because I wanted to ask you this question just after. But maybe because you're talking about it, I just want to ask you, what is your problem with the escapade? Because we all know that you did this brilliant song, and wow. For many people it's a really good track, and I know that you don't like it. I heard it's because of your voice, but the voice is good, so I need to ask you finally, what is your fucking problem with it?
Is Bernard still there? I hope he is here, actually. Okay. No, that whole thing. So prior to coming here in 1981, I would happen to be in London. Just before I arrived here, I was in London for a couple of weeks. The boys, let's just call them, were rehearsing for the tour that's upcoming. They're going to go to Paris, and then they're going to come back and finish in London. So it's about 4 or 5 nights per venue. So it's 8 to 10 gig event on tour. When I arrived in London, I had written the Escapades record. Probably late 80, I wrote it. And it was a childish homage to graffiti in my realistic mind. However,
a good child.
However, in the studio with them, and I was friends with all of them, Mick, Paul, Topper, Joe, but most certainly Joe. Joe and I bonded more closely. I loved them all, but me and Joe had a thing. He was like a brother to me in a sense at that moment, because I'm an only child, so I never had a brother. You know, my mom's gone, 5, 6 years ago, so here I am, you know. My dad's still around, he's cool, but after Mom, he wasn't well, so you know, here I am solo dolo. And Joe was a real inspiration. So I said, hey Joe, I've written this song. You guys, could you lay down a track and could I have the cassette tape of it? And that was my ambition of that track. And so it wasn't until a year later when the rap tour emerged and Celluloid got wind of it, were producing records, and it became a 5-record set. The reason why, it's not like I don't like it, I just felt like it wasn't ready for public consumption. But in the end, as the machine and the manipulation of the whole kind of cultural thing was the tsunami of that, I was just kind of caught up in it. Plus, I was still, it's only a year later, you know, it's not a lie, I did do it. See, I can separate myself from it like 40 years later and be like, hey, wait a minute, you know, no, I mean, let's not take that seriously. But in the moment, yeah, I guess I was still caught up in it, and I kind of just let it slide. But I don't know. I mean, it's not my. You know, what can I do? I can't run from it. However, I'll say on the end of that story, I did sing on a record called "Overpowered by Funk" with The Clash on the Combat Rock album. I'm very proud of that because I wrote that along with Joe. Joe had a little bit to write, and I was just like, yo, I'm on a fucking Clash album, you know? And so for that, straight up, let's have a conversation. Futuro's escapades, can we not even acknowledge it? You know, so that's kind of how I feel about it. So, not to say any of that experience was wrong, it wasn't, it was the best time of my life. But as a product, you know, going out to the public, I mean, you know, every person can understand, you know, like, hey, you know, today it's you know, it's like a file you sent to somebody by mistake or something, you know what I mean? But well, that was okay. Yeah. Now there's another aspect. Now, hey, Fat Five Freddy was one of my homies. Phase 2, he and I went back prior to the military in the early 70s. So Phase was my boy. DST was new. The other, the Smurfs, I mean, I forget the pack, oh yeah, me. And so the 5-record package did have this rectangular puzzle, if you will, of 5 designs that collectively made a, you know, artwork. I mean, everyone knows about those, but so that was one aspect of that thing that was also cool, you know, even though I'm like, you know, hate that this is publicly available. I'm kind of out here selling it. You know, that's almost, you know, fraudulent on my part, but I'm just rolling with it because that's what's happening. But oh, I do like the design. You know what I mean? It's always like moments of conflict and whatever, but it's still early. I mean, the song was written, like I said, 80, 81, 82. It's you know, we're on the rap tour. It's a performance of me and Mick Jones singing it. You know, it's just, you can't like run from it. You know, I look horrendous. You know, like fucking. You know, it's like. I mean, sadly, I see not a clown, but clown-like. Let's just say I see myself clown-like in that moment. But, you know, that's just my opinion. You know, I'm a little critical of myself. So. There you go.
And we all know that the music is really important in your life, in your work. We can see the rhythms, and I just wanted to know if your first relationship to the art when you were a kid was the music, because we know what you did with The Clash, we know what you did with Uncle, with many other types of examples we can say. And I would like to know.
It's a great dimension. That square is a really cool, you know, canvas or whatever, like a medium and some spatial element that you can put stuff inside of. But yeah, I mean, music growing up, you know, Lenny's story from the heart, you know, like, and you're right, you know, I probably am from another planet because I don't know my biological family, right? I was raised by a black woman and a white guy, which is pretty, you know, avant-garde for the late 50s, early 60s, and through my life as a child growing up. Yeah, I didn't get it all, obviously. You know, we're pretty stupid back then. There's limited resources, and you know, my people didn't have a lot of resources anyway. But just trying to figure it all out, it was weird. You know, I wasn't like him, I'm not like them. You know, my guys are different. You know, they're acting weird. You know, they don't want to be seen together. The whole growing up in New York like that was pretty weird. But searching for identity was a big thing for me, and you know, it led to all of this, no doubt. At least the first chapter, you know, the graffiti school part where I created the identity and, you know, ran with that. But for the most part, I think I'm just on this like creative, you know, like evolution and doing projects and things, and you know, just. But essentially, without honestly, you know, much. I don't want to say ambition. Yeah, I'm you know, I do my job. You know, I'm really serious about it. But it's not like I have an agenda about stuff. You know, like you're an amazing individual, Hugo, in the sense that, like, in a modern moment, you know, you're someone, you know, I use the joke, you know, it's like an inside man, you know, like you're within these institutions, yet you're coming with a kind of curatorial awareness where you're trying to represent our community and our culture, and I'm really grateful, not just to see it, but to participate with you in like the RAM show and the other interventions that we've done over the years we've known each other. So individuals like you, not just here in Paris, but around the planet, are very important for the continuum, or you know, to allow the duration. It's not the duration. Like I think it's time that our school did have its moment, maybe perhaps. But you could like reverse engineer it and just understand, like back 20 years ago, none of those institutions were investing in any of our stuff, kind of thing, right? There was no conscious. We still needed another generation to arrive of curatorial mindset that's a bit more, it's not sympathetic, but it's like, yeah, like, look at this whole world of this art form, if you will. And I don't see how you can compare it to anything in the last 100 years that has the power to touch people's lives in a way, like, but like, not just in the institutional thing, which is great, but like down on the street. And you know, the streets are talking, and it's kind of like representative of the fact that, like, how over the course of it, just from 1980, fuck it, 90, you know, like, okay, 35 years later, here we are. You know, this individual, if we did a consensus, or not a consensus, but some sort of an average of everyone sitting in this room right now, we're gonna come up with like a 33-year-old or something, right? So that time of life has enabled you to grow up on the whole shit. You know, you're not hating. You're not like, yo, what the fuck? What are you guys doing? Get the fuck out of here. It's like, oh, hey, you know, if people being like inviting you into the building, you know, and that's actually a great accomplishment, I think, you know, because, you know, we need people in the building, you know, then that could enable other people to, you know, enter that space, so those spaces as well.
Another one that was part of the building was Greg Tate, and I know you knew him and not me, I read it. He said about the hip-hop that it was a response by black bodies to post-industrial societies, and then he said hip-hop is black Prozac. So I wanted to ask you if you were a medicine, and how you feel about this quote, because we all know that at the early of the movement, for sure, it was more black community, Puerto Rican community, more than white, probably.
Yes, certainly.
That the renaissance of the movement in Europe did something else, with a mix of bourgeoisie, intellectual, and all the others, and it was a really interesting mix. And I would like to know your vision about this quote, the black Prozac hip-hop.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I'm not a pharmaceutical guy. Prozac, is that an upper or a downer? Is that an amphetamine or a barbiturate? It keeps you up or it puts you down? So I would imagine down. Okay. That's just to show you, I'm a pothead. Okay, I'm an old school fucking hippie. I smoke weed. I don't do any other drugs of any kind. I like my Macallan, you know. If I want to be a show-off, I'll get the like 20, you know, I get the expensive shit. But I'm not fucking with pharmaceuticals my whole life. Oh, my back hurts, my this hurts. I run to fuck all that. I don't do any of that. I'm like holistic in a sense of like, I just tell my mind like, deal with it. Stop being, you know, just handle it, you know, get on with it. No medication. So honestly, I don't even know what Prozac is. So if it's a downer, and he said that probably more than a decade ago, and rest in peace, Greg, he was a really sweet guy. And yeah, we miss him in the sense of like, not just a guardian like an Agnès and people like her, or them, or him, or whoever, but also these gatekeepers of history and some contextual, you know, like, can speak the academic speak, and like, talk to people, you know, above and below their pay, whatever, levels. Like me, I had to, you know, in the early days of, oh yeah, your thing looks like Mathieu or Kandinsky, you know, and man, it sounds ignorant, but truth be told, as much as I like design and all these colors and countries, I fucking didn't know who Kandinsky was. I'm like, well, what does that mean? You know, like, as a graffiti writer, your first response would be like, wait, you're accusing me of biting someone's stuff, right? Like, or copying someone? So initially, my entrance into the art world is being compared to a very accomplished and renowned artist, and yet I'm rejecting it because I'm so arrogant. And if I could have played that character role again when that happened, I would have known to do like the Jean-Michel kind of style, where you play right to that. Like when they say, oh, Cy Twombly, you school dude on who Cy Twombly is, kind of thing, right? Where I felt, and that was also my feeling of like, fuck, man, I'm not ready for this level of like the art world, you know what I mean? I don't think I could communicate well. I was just still too like not refined yet. It would probably take like 84, 80, you know, once again, I harken back to, and like I said, I love that 85, I love an even number math. But once my son was on the planet, you know, I had a real different priority shift and responsibility level, and I really, I needed that. But you had asked a question about my music as a kid, and I wanted to spin off of the hip hop thing, because, I mean, does that mean, so then hip hop is a kind of a down element then is that what he's trying to say with that quote? Because I don't think I understand it.
You were saying that it was helping the community to suffer less.
I understand, okay. Right, because I don't know what the drugs intended to do, I get you. Okay, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's so many ways of looking at that then. Sure, of course. I mean, look at it, right? I mean, you know, happy birthday, you know, you guys are 51 this year, it's incredible. But look what it's done, I think, for the extension of just the music and the beats and stuff, and, you know, the cultural element, you know, whatever, attire, way of speak, you know, just styles that were created that still find, you know, you can still retro them and, you know, they're still sellable or whatever. I don't know, I mean, once again, like these are deep things. Hugo, you have to keep the conversations, you know. It's like hardball stuff, you know, but I mean, once again, when I think of Greg, I think of Faze. Faze was another guardian of our community, Faze 2, if you don't know, I'm referencing Lonnie. He was a fucking genius, and I think, you know, from a first generational architect, he's someone to be admired and respected. And you honor him in the show at Palais. But I mean, he also was amazing on paper and could speak, you know, whether he had the, you know, academic eloquence or not, his words were very translatable and, you know, with clear intent of meaning. And, you know, he has a brilliant book that was out, and I just remember, like, for me and Faze and you know, people like
Greg. I mean, there aren't many people, and losing Greg and losing Faze means we've lost two individuals who could be more helpful even tomorrow, telling our story moving forward, you know. But yeah, Greg, the last time I saw him was at the Basquiat show in Boston, when he was involved with the kind of curatorial support, and I guess he written an essay or something for that. Yeah, sweet guy.
And another question about your work is about the spray pen, because obviously you're the master of this element, and I wanted to ask you if you already thought about your work without the spray. If the spray never happened, who you would be, and maybe it's not an English correction I'd say, but I'm asking that, and also because when we were working inside the show, you were able to think about what was the brand at this time. Was it Marabout? Was it Belton? Was it...
of course.
And also how you fight as an artist with this tool, because we know that the brands want to make it more sometimes cheap, or sometimes more elegant, or sometimes more rude or less rude. And it affects you in your work. So I'd like to know about your relationship with the spray.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't imagine, you know, one of my most recent paintings, you know, I did it like a week ago. It's the Happy Mother's Day image on Instagram. That's my latest post. So, if you will, that's like my latest work as far as like, well, what did you paint recently? And if you look at some of the foundational elements, my cranes, which actually come from Paris, from that first trip to 1981, some influence I had with the construction of La Défense, which was over, you know, on the other side of the Eiffel Tower, and the Arc de Triomphe. And but just to say, the crane element in my work has always been there. You know, it's just a kind of foundational element in addition to the atoms, you know, whatever. But yeah, I can't imagine not spray painting. I mean, yes, I could do stuff where I didn't spray paint, no doubt. It wouldn't be my first choice. If anything, for me also, like I'm exploring another moment right now. I mean, there's one collage of mine here in the show. I guess it's you know, everything in here stops at 95, but then there's a 2025 collage. So it's like her collection and then this new piece I've done just to be here in the presence. And that's more reflective of my illustrative work, my characters, and this collage period I'm having right now. And yeah, I could probably dabble some paint on them, but these aren't paintings, these are hand-drawn collages with other paper elements. And so I see them in another area, and you know, maybe that's time for me to not paint necessarily and still have that argument with myself. Like in this one slamming painting, I was talking about how, yeah, that's like 10% aerosol, 90% acrylic. And this piece, for example, is like 100% aerosol. So it's just these levels of, am I introducing the traditional artist tools? Do I want to say, you know, F that? No, I'm a purist. I don't know where to lie on that. I think what happens is the emotion of the day dictates how that's going to come. You know, it's all dependent on where you're at, how you're feeling, like who said hi to you. You know, all of these things, they actually do affect your day. And if you're in some creative process like that, well, it all comes out, you know, somehow. So, but I still like that battle of like, how do I, what I simply do is I just do the formula like I just did. I'll say, okay, this will be like 50-50. You know, if I work in formulas, I can achieve the, you know, the task. It's just easy for me thinking like that. Like, oh, I'll just do a 50-50, you know, I'll bust out whatever, what I determine to be 50%, and then I'll, you know, my own dumb formulas. But there may be discovery, you know, that's what I'm saying about, it's not just failure, but it's discovery and, you know, success, if you will, like, oh my God, like, look at that. Or when I'm doing my atomic elements and it's all about, like, the weight of the line, if you will, like, it's all been the paint per se has already kind of been evaporated, and now I approach it because I paint upside down. You know, it's a whole thing. Yeah, it's my own, you know, bugged out way of using a spray can. But I think, of course, I mean, everyone who uses a spray can, you know, is pretty much true to form and tradition. You know, we're all vertical. We're like vertical artists. You know, we work standing up in front of our surface. And the other bizarre thing about spray painting, in a way, if you think about it, and you know, people have said it, and of course it's actually true technically, but like you could do a painting with a spray can and never touch the painting, right? There's a kind of weird thing about that, because whether you're hovering, whatever element, however, I mean, yes, you can scratch the painting, and you know, you drip the paint, you know, use the bottom of the can, and whatever, you do some gesture. But there's also a process where you might not ever actually touch the canvas, right? So that's just an interesting thing about, I think, aerosol painting. The same with airbrushing, right? But I mean, airbrushing is not what we do, in a sense. You know, it's a bit more, you know, whatever. I don't want to diss airbrushing. I mean, you know, it's just, I don't want to be accused of using one. Okay, let's be clear. But it's just weird. It's like a different medium. I know.
It's like the sans contact with your phone. No
Bust
contact.
out a dope. Let me get a dope T-shirt. You know, it's one of those kind of things. Like.
So I remember I asked to a famous painter called Stéphane Callier to ask you a question, and he asked you if you were inspired by the big master from China, from the history of art of China and Japan. And you answered, I'm inspired by l'art de la guerre. And I would like to know why this answer. Yeah, because
the art of war.
That you had a shift in your life when you started the graffiti, then you went to the army,
Maybe, excuse me, Mark.
All the flights, the camouflage, and then you came back with the break. So I want
Yes.
to hear you on that.
Well, I mean, that's my path, yeah. I mean, I was growing up at that period, as we mentioned, you know, whether it's a civil rights issue, given what I said about my own upbringing and the house I lived in, you know, the world outside my doors and on television was, you know, 1968, Stanley Kubrick, 2001, Planet of the Apes, right? So you have these two films that pop out that year. The next year we land on the moon. We're still in Vietnam. There's a body count every night of, you know, boys being killed. And so, yeah, it was quite weird. The graffiti thing by 69, it really didn't start to get published yet, so it's not like that happened. But my short stint from, I would say, 70 to 73, when I was trying to become a graffiti writer, was just a learning curve. A lot of it was me being more a fan than a participant even, you know, like let me do some reconnaissance, let me go around this system. I was very much, you know, as an only child and independent, I used to venture off on my own a lot and, you know, self-discovery or run into other people, and, you know, anytime you have you know, someone along, you know, it made the experience feel a bit safer, I guess, but I operated alone a lot. And then when I got in the Navy, you know, I'm 18 years old, I got educated about, you know, certain disciplines in life and realities, you know, but I didn't get brainwashed, you know, I took a lot of that. The travel was amazing. And so when I came back and did break, and what a lot of people don't know about break train, and you know, I'm so grateful to have painted something like that, but I also need to talk about Martha Cooper, right? Because I honestly feel, and we're not connected to the hip, but Martha is another very important person for me. And I met Marty before I met Agnès, but here's another woman in my life, almost the same age group, perhaps, who captured a photograph of a train I painted and basically immortalized, you know, like kind of immortalized me. Now, if she doesn't do that, once again, left, right, hint, yes, no, my path is totally different. I could never explain, I mean, when you see it, it's like, oh wow, you know, whatever you're feeling it is, but mine would be like, oh wow, or worse. but then it'd be like, well, what an amazing photo, like what a, to me that was like capturing some wild animal in the jungle. It was just phenomenal that she caught it. Not a blurry shot, not a, it's not raining, it was just fucking perfect. So, historically speaking, I'm so grateful because, it's been reproduced, it's published in one of the graffiti community Bibles. It's a 2-page spread. It maybe changed young artists to think about alternative paths. I didn't want to call myself an abstractionist. I think I'd heard of an abstractionist by then, but I was just trying to be unique and different. But the October of '80, when I paint Break, and I would be turned 25 that year in November. A month later, I turned 25. But I painted that in October of '84. 1980. And prior to that is the Esses Project with myself and Zephyr and all the artists that came through to paint. It's a historical project in New York in the summer of '80, where we were attempting to get a bunch of artists to come in, do paint on canvases that Andy and myself had stretched, perhaps 40 or more, canvases, paint, materials, books, tables, the whole setup. It was almost like some after-school program type of vibe. But these were all the graffiti writers of New York City in 1980. Everyone from, obviously Zephyr was with me, Dondi, Crash, Days, Hayes. Everyone was invited, not everyone chose to paint. As I was one of the directors of that space and in charge of maintaining it, I didn't work on anything until that project was done. When everyone was done, finally I tried to make my painting, and it was horrible, right? The piece that I did. It's in the collection. Maybe it's sounds like the rap song or something, but to me it was really horrible. I was like, I'm gonna make up, and the idea of this show, Esses, was we were gonna catacomb it, whatever, cocoon it, and in 20 years, he's like, Futura, in the year 2000, imagine that, man, 20 years from now, we're gonna show this collection. And I thought it was a pretty cool idea, and I submitted my work, and everyone signed an agreement, that we were part of this vision. And later, people got salty, when the pieces leaked, and there was a whole little bit of a scandal about that, but a lot of it's been rectified, and someone now is the caretaker of that collection. But the Break Train was my response creatively as a spray painter, as a graffiti writer, to everything I'd seen. And I was checking technique, style, how do you do your background, how do you blah, blah, blah. How are you using the colors? And I remember thinking more about their technical prowess, what they were doing with everything on the inside of their letters and their design work, and then would cover it all up with the letters, right? You feel me? So everyone's gravitating to the letters. I was like, no, man, wow, lose the letters. Focus on these little design elements that are really dope, and use the subway car scale, which had already been the gold standard, Lee, Scene, Stay High back in the red car era. Every graffiti writer knew that a whole car was the ultimate. And so just paint it, and it would be absent of those traditions. And I called it Break because I wanted to break that mold or something. But I also did it very unconsciously and spontaneously, as I approach a lot of my stuff. It's not like, okay, I'm gonna put the red here and I just line up the paint and just start, and then the painting, I believe, it's not a dance, but it can help me find my step, and then I'm like, oh shit, okay, I'll balance you with you, and then and then it's just like you're just filling space. But I think I did Break Train in less than 4 hours, which is also remarkable. The Mathieu pieces, they said were done in like less than 30 minutes, but just to say that I think for something you're giving away for free in the kind of most amazing gallery on the planet, like now I trip out thinking that even happened, right? That like they had trains running around this city. Yeah, eventually it may come up to some experience of being cleaned or whatever, but for the most part, it's running. You know, it didn't break, you know, don't figure, whatever, like it's running. So this type of visibility to a public who couldn't care less, but, you know, to those young kids that were watching those trains rolling by, that must have looked really cool. You know, and in a way, yeah, you can pay for it now. In any major city around the planet, you want to wrap a train or you want to advertise your shit or whatever, you know, there's always an economic bottom line, you know, to those things, but it would make me, I don't know, you know, it's just, that the era that we could have taken ownership as we did was remarkable, actually, and I think just to experience that, and then, okay, usher in, you know, let's just get on with life, and now I'm 45 years removed from the break train, right? And the energy and the feeling I got from not only seeing it go by, but being in the car, because the day I painted it, I was out waiting for it, you know, and then being inside of it. And because we're having this memory lane moment with the show in New York, with the photographs from 1972 and my own presence revealed through a fucking photograph that I'm so grateful that they found. So all of these things, you know, conspiring to make my journey richer even, you know, like, I mean, I respect Martha, as I said, and her photograph is so fucking historical. But now this other find of an amateur 15, 16-year-old kid tagging up New York's subways, you know, the raw reality of the origins of the movement, well, that's also kind of priceless for me. Absent of the creativity and color. It's just a uni-wide, you know, it's just like a marker tag. But holds significance in the sense of the meaning of my place in this whole wonderful journey, you know, and like, you don't know who your mom's, pop's gonna be, you know, you just arrive on the planet, there they are, and there you are, and wherever that is, that's what it is, right? So coming from New York at this particular moment, with this particular chemistry, with all these other things in the air, and, you know, my young imagination, and I don't know, you know, yeah, my characters come from Alien. You know, I saw Alien in '79, and I got inspired to start drawing my characters. You know, so all these things, it's, you know, my Star Wars affection, where if you went into my room right now, you wouldn't believe, like, this guy, this is not his office, this is like a joke. It's so, like, childish and still, like, certainly youthful, but also, like, I'm trapped in time with my obsession for this, you know, this particular genre. My Star Wars thing is crazy, but I have so many, I don't want to say passions, but yeah, I'm just into a lot of things. Once again, like outside of my own process and, you know, identity. It doesn't get boring, but it's like, you know, like I just want to diversify my way of thinking.
And recently you worked with a friend of Agnès, thanks to Agnès, it's Hans-Ulrich, and you did together with Agnès the Point d'Ironie.
Yes.
And I want to steal a question from him, because he's always asking to the artist he's in connection. When was the epiphany for you, when you thought about the first time as an artist to define you? Was it the break train, or was it another one, or another moment?
Yeah, I mean, once again, you know, at the moment of the break train, I'm already trying to segue out of this underground story I'm aware that there's going to be like a surfacing of all of us. We're going to go above ground. We're going to try to pursue our creativity up there. The break was more like, and I didn't see a photograph of the break train from Martha for like a year in real time, if you will. So a year later, I see her photograph. Scene, another famous graffiti writer, had what we would call a Henry Chalfant style photo, which is like a click, 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 and then a mash up and tape together. You know, it's the best you can do with the technology of the time, but he had given me a photograph that he had taken, and I published that in my book, my first generation book from the year 2000. So props to Scene for giving me the first visual proof of the train, which was amazing. Beyond my own presence in it, as I said, that first day I rode around in it, we take a photo. But regardless, yeah, the break did define me, but I don't think it's my best work, because once again, it was kind of unconscious under extreme circumstances, if you will. I don't know, I mean, there's a short list of actual paintings, works on canvas, that I'm very proud of. I think they define what I'm trying to say with my, not technical ability, but the way I use my medium. And I don't know if they're important, but I mean, I've spoken about this one painting, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is another character type painting of these three figures. I pull from movie genre as well, spaghetti western elements. I grew up on all that. When I toured with the Clash, back as I mentioned in, what was it, 81, their opening intro music was the Ennio Morricone Italian soundtrack elements. So that's still been embedded. But, I mean, moving forward right now, like I said before at one point, like I know my best work is out there. I'm still very motivated. I think I'm in a community of extremely young, talented people. It's like, yeah, I don't like, oh, you're living like, I mean, I appreciate it, I swear I do, but it's like, oh man, pump the brakes, let me still create, right? It's like, because it also sounds a little bit like, oh, it's over, or something. I don't know, I don't like living legend, don't call me that, but.
And for sure, you're one of the major of the subway school. You did also the studio school and the studio work, and you're one of the master also of the studio work. But you also worked with the digital, and you did many approach with the digital. You did your Instagram account for many years as a piece of art. You did many collage, and maybe you can talk about this and how you thought about the invitation of Agnès and Hans Ulrich for the Point d'Ironie, because
yes, I didn't
it was easy for you to produce paintings or to look on the past and to print archives with your history with Agnès, and I wanted to know why you decided to do this new version of collage with names, with the colors and all the elements you put together. So I would love to know the story of how you created this one.
Yeah, well, that was essentially at the time of the ask. I think it's like during the pandemic. It may sadly be 2-3 years ago. And of course, there's elements in there. It's like you were talking about politics and whatever an artist can do to have some messaging in there. I think it was somewhat in response to the war that had broken out in Europe, in Ukraine, which I couldn't really understand, like how that could happen in a modern world. And, I thought everything was cool, so it really kind of blew my mind. And then I was coming up with this thing where, it was going to be this no war poster and try to address like global peace or something on that level. So, yeah, but the digital thing, 80s I do my thing, and 90s come, and oh shit, streetwear, you make t-shirts. But by the mid-90s, here comes the web, and I was, it was my moment or whatever. I think my digital arrival in the mid-90s, I had a web page. Some of you may know that old site. There's a web page called Wayback Machine that exists that has archived a lot of those, and you can actually find a portal there to take you to the old site. But I thought for me that was really like a moment when all these entities were arriving, you know, Facebook and all this stuff, and people were coming online in some capacity, and .comming was a big moment. And I was like, wow, I see this new medium as an opportunity to exchange information with people. And it was a fantastic experience for me. And then I took a job at like Kinko's or something in the early 90s, and here comes Macintosh computing. And you know, it was sort of like this whole thing where I got not my PhD, but like I fucking got really good at Adobe. And then or Photoshop, Illustrator, yeah, it was just like another tool for me. And later it was helpful because I helped to teach a lot of people, you know, set up some kids like, and you know, help some people on their journey to discovery. This is like late 90s into the millennium. So yeah, my digital moment was really real, and I thought my website was my break train, right? Like it's me once again, like in your world, and there was no world yet, it was all still new. But here I am on this new medium, and I'm gonna fuck it up because I'm gonna spend, you know, no accelerants, maybe some coffee. I'm gonna stay up like all fucking weekend because I learned how to do HTML. You know, it's very basic, but it was just intense in terms of, you know, my thing is spin, and maybe not tomorrow or yesterday, but my thing used to be back then, and 30 years ago, well, most people are gonna come and give you 8 hours of work. Or, you know, 6.5, they're gonna fuck around, you know, cigarette, whatever, they gotta get lunch. And no one in that group of people that are gonna give you that are gonna give you double that. No one. They're gonna walk away. I'm the guy that could give you double that. I won't talk about it, I just won't leave, I'm still working. So you'll break out at 6, I'll break out at 12. Essentially, I'm working the job of 2 people. And once you get off on your ability to work, challenge yourself to do the work of even 2.3. You feel me? And so back then, that's how I used to be. I used to be really motivated to learn how to do shit and do shit. I wasn't a guy doing coke, talking about what I'm gonna do. I was a guy drinking coke, doing stuff.
And maybe it will be my last question, and I will ask you in the public to ask you some other questions, because I know that we have some nerds in the room. But this question is about the relationship you have with the museum, because I'm convinced, and many people say that probably one day the museum will not exist anymore, or will not have the same central role in the way to create and to talk about the art history. And you're the proof that you went through the art history, through the subway school, through the brands, through the collaboration with people like Agnès, who is an institution but in a different way than the museums. And it took so long to have you in the biggest museums in the world. You did your exhibition in the Bronx Museum finally. But I just want to ask you, what is your relationship to this idea of the museum? Because we know that the museum is a precious place, but it's also a place where you can have troubles, you can, the museum steal, the museum rape, the museum exclude people, artists, communities, or pieces. And I just want to know if you see the future with the museum or not, and what was your relationship with the museum until today?
Well, I mean, prior to the Bronx Museum, I had only been in the museum's group exhibitions, you know, historical, timeline, retrospective kind of shows for a particular movement. I mean, for me, I'm so grateful to be acknowledged by the Bronx, you know, I mean, there's levels, you know, and sadly we're all like judgmental on the facts of numbers, so it's like, okay, Bronx Museum, Brooklyn Museum, MoMA, Whitney, Guggenheim, you know what I mean? Like just make your own profile. No, that doesn't worry me at all, you know, and once again, like the agenda, the ambition for that's not it, you know, I'm not like a lot of my contemporaries where they're pretty calculated and assured of what they want to do. At this point in my life, like I say, I got great health, But I just want to wake up tomorrow, have another day, do my thing, and continue to move forward in that way. You know, like, I'm not, you know, Kubrick's he's one of my gods, you know, Coppola. Like, film really spoke to me from my generation because I grew up on a black and white television, you know, watching old movies from the 50s and Twilight Zone and shit and whatever, like I was a TV rat. So that's my upbringing. The sci-fi idea of post-war nuclear dust that made all the creatures giants, you know, all these kind of fantasy stories, like B-movie type stuff. I loved it. I loved all that. I loved the Martians. I loved the outer space guys. You know, I was like, wow, that's cool. Take me. You know, I saw fucking Close Encounters. I'm like, yeah, take me. You know what I mean? I'm ready to go. So once again, you know, I've been a dreamer, looking at the stars, thinking about the future. I mean, to see my tag from 1973, yeah, I'm 72, 16-year-old kid with this vision of Futura 2000 with these arrows kind of pointing forward and giving myself that identity. It's kind of pretty forward thinking and very ambitious actually, right? And here we are 25 years from that marker. That's why, like, at a certain point in 1999, you know, shout out to Prince, I had to abandon it because I'm like, wow, I've actually lived 30 years have passed now. I'm there from 15 to 45. You know, it's like it's here, and in a way, it felt like, no, you know, this is not what I was imagining. You know, it was very like, what was 2000, guys? Y2K, and the whole hype around the computers resetting the clocks and all this kind of nonsense. So there's a lot of hype and hysteria, but in the end, my identity was compromised. You know, now I see, like, what? I've seen Andre 3000 forever, and I'm like, yeah, that might have been a greater number to go with, but, you know, gotta be me. But in the end, yeah, I'm Futura 2000 on my social, which is only 2000 in Spanish, so I'm not like hiding anything. It's all wordplay, it doesn't mean anything, you know what I mean? Like, what matters, I feel, is, yeah, the work is cool, the products, oh shit, the sneakers, yeah, they're dope. I mean, all of that stuff is amazing, crazy superficial and fucking materialistic. I think it's what's in people's hearts, is what it's really about. So if you guys like me for the cool shit I do, I appreciate that. But like me better for the good person I believe I am and how I treat others. And, you know, coming from me, maybe just simple acts of kindness. That's the vibe. You know, a little bit at a time. Don't have to be any reward involved. You know, I don't do kindness to get a pat on the back or somebody thank me. I don't need a thank you. It gives me pleasure. You know, so those kind of ways to approach things. And you mentioned Agnès, and I want to shout out Virgil Abloh, a great collaborator, gone horribly too soon, but someone who was kind to me and in a position to. He wrote some very beautiful words in my book, and like I say, some people had nice things to say about me, and I'm grateful for that. But the people I collaborated with over time, you know, it isn't about cashing a check. I'm not out here trying to make money. I come from fucking zero, and I have no problem, you know what I mean, like eating tuna fish sandwiches, or, you know, haven't done that in a minute. I make a great one, but I don't have to. I don't have to eat ramen. I don't have to eat, like, well, fuck it, I don't like creamy, give me the chunky peanut butter. You know what I mean? Like decisions like that. Now, I wasn't raising my family that way, but when there was a struggle, I had no problem, like, you know, I wasn't living above my lifestyle, and, you know, not trying to live above my means in some way or flaunt some level of monetary. You know, yeah, I have a nice watch, I have a nice whip, I'm leasing it. You know, yeah, this kind of, those are materialistic things that are, you know, somewhat almost like maybe necessary in a way, but I know what I could kind of, you know, I know how I can cut the fat on things, you know, and once again, that gives me a chance to give back to those I care about, those who work for me, my loved ones, you know, my team. I always try to, you know, I don't want to say like treat people correctly, obviously as a human being, but also like as a financial boss, like pay people, you know, the good people that you have, like keep your team, take care of your team, you know what I mean? And show also like, you know, it's not about what I can put in my pocket, it's about a group kind of mentality. How do we make it all better for all of us, you know? And now we're dealing with human beings, with children, and you know, it's like, hey, that's a lot of responsibility actually too, but that's part of my trip. Like now I wanna not like put people on like back in the day. That just meant like, yo, put me on, like, yo, like get me a job or introduce me to somebody. But like really be, you know, someone that can help people also moving forward, pursuing their dreams as well.
So we are talking since 1 hour already.
Yeah, that's a long chat.
And I know that your time is precious.
No, but I came here to Paris for this. I mean, I love Paris. When I first came with that clip, with the trip from the Clash, I was this kid from New York, you know, yeah, I'm whatever, you know, 25, whatever. But I loved it because my dad, you know, I'm, as I said, I'm going to be 70 in November, so I'm old enough to have a father who served in World War II, and you know, it's not like the D-Day guy, he's the guy from North Africa coming up through Italy and liberating France. So I always had this strong connection with the country, storytelling as a kid. And when I arrived, you know, at the Meridian, Parker Meridian Hotel, past the Eiffel, I keep saying Eiffel Tower, sorry, the Arc de Triomphe, heading towards the Bois de Boulogne or whatever, that Louis Foundation and La Défense area. But on that side, on the left side of that avenue, the big avenue, it was just incredible. Like, and I felt like I was having like this vibe, like not American in Paris, but I was like, man, I didn't make it, but I was like, damn, I'm with the Clash, and I'm in a hotel room in Paris, and I swear to God, like a guy came and, you know, like, bonsoir, monsieur, like, talk about my cultural experiences as a kid at the World's Fair, right, in these pavilions where they would recreate the vibe. I'd never been to Europe in my life, right? This is like day one. And I just remember like, wow, you know, this place is everything I imagine it to be. And I think the first day I walked from that hotel down the under the Arc de Triomphe, down the Champs-Élysées, left at the park, down Rue de Rivoli, and then did a loop. You know, I just did the crazy walk, and that was my first real moment. And I remember getting back to the Arc de Triomphe as I was returning, and it's like, fuck, man, like, how did these Tour de France guys, like, how did they fucking come up this thing? Like, it was like an incline. And later in life, I actually saw the American champion Greg LeMond win on the Champs-Élysées in 1986. That was kind of cool, you know, some years, because I'm a cycling fanatic also, but so some years later I had that moment in Paris, and I've been to a few Tour de France finales in Paris on the Champs. So every time I'm back for, you know, things like that, it's like, wow, man, you know, like this unbelievable outcome to my story and events over time that I didn't necessarily calculate or try to really orchestrate. It's just this organic thing that seems to happen. And yeah, that's why like I'm touched by an angel, could be my parents, you know, could be Gandhi, could be Faisal, could be Ramel, could be Ali, you know, any number of individuals, Jean-Michel, Keith, Andy, you know, all of you guys who are part of my story. I knew you in life, I knew you, you know, back in, I mean, those old timers, you know, it's more like back in the day when the world was obviously different. You know, it was more based on reality and our interactions, and yeah, people gossiped and stories spread about such and such or whatever, but at the core of it, it was just about a kind of reality. And I'm, you know, just so grateful that my outcome is beyond it's not, it's very improper. It really is. But you, Hugo, with just inviting me to participate with the RAM show and this event per se, and the show at the Monet Museum with the Mathieu element. I think the group from isn't a Museum of Graffiti from Miami out here doing a show also? Are those guys out here with an exhibition? You're not sure? Okay. No, I mean, I just sense like so many things are going on. And you guys are having a show Saturday. Yeah, like Bando and Niels are having an exhibition with Magda on Saturday.
And the Gordon Matta Clark at White Columns?
Yeah, well, the Gordon Matta Clark show at White Columns is ending actually this Saturday. Sadly, I'm going home Friday, but I'm going to get to speak at the downtown Whitney. They're having a chat. I'm going to speak with Roger and some of the people that are there. But yeah, that Matta Clark thing, like I said, it's a real moment for me. Like, I'm so grateful that they found this image. And it's, you know, I can't describe it to you guys and how it made me feel in the sense that, like, I lived my whole life as myself, and I have my identity within this whole story. Over the last 67, 68 years, I never knew this thing existed. And it actually didn't exist because it wasn't revealed to the public yet. Upon seeing it, Break Train notwithstanding, I was like, fuck man, like, that really hits me in the heart because, yeah, I was there. You know, it's like a proof of life moment, right? And once again, other people will collaborate. Oh yeah, I remember you, bro, I hung out with you and blah, blah, blah. And you know, like a small percentage of me is like, oh wow, okay, I'm grateful, like you have a memory and recognition of me hanging out with you back when we were kids. But to be photographed is another level, you know, that's just like, wow. And the show, I got such a response. We actually were out of the country when it happened. I had seen the show, but man, I don't have FOMO. I don't have fear of missing out of anything. You know, I'm like, not like too cool for school, but it's like, no, man, there's nothing going on that I'm gonna get excited about. And I was so gutted that I missed that show because I could see from everyone's posts on Instagram or whatever, like, not just the fucking crowd in the room, like the capacity, but I could see the faces, the energy I perceived to be in the room. But looking on all these, and these guys are old men now, right? We're all from the early 70s approaching our early 70s. It's just a mathematical anomaly, but it's true. And the joy on all their faces was what made me feel so good because you could see that that generation had long been forgotten and or told stories about it. And been there, done that, know about you guys, yeah, you're great. So it's not a lifeline, but it's like a, you know, it's an encore performance, I feel, for that generation of old timers who do get to come out behind the cupboards and out of the woodwork and be part of the modern story and discussion because, in fact, they never got a dime. You know, no one did for the work they did and on you know, illegally writing on walls and trains. No one did. But what they spawned was a movement that came into the 80s with individuals like me who transitioned to galleries where such a thing was even possible. You know, my first painting sold for $250. I laughed. I was like, oh shit, I did that in a couple of hours. That's $125 an hour. You know, that's how my hustler mind was, because what were they paying back in the day? $5-6 an hour? It seemed like a good wage, you know, by comparison. So, I hate to end on money, like I said, I fucking hate it, but yeah, I guess you gotta eat and feed your friends and family. Look, I know I'm like long-winded and I'm sorry if I bored anyone, but I've been truthful with everyone here tonight because, you know, I heard it in a movie. It's called Glengarry Glen Ross. It's a pretty cool movie. It's a good book also. David Mamet's an incredible writer. But it's like, tell the truth, it's the easiest thing to remember. And I found that to be a good lesson in life, because someone like me, I don't have to really embellish anything. You know, it's been all too amazing. And I'm just grateful for my participation in the whole timeline, not just my work, but my contribution to the greater good of all of us out here, and how we've all moved this tsunami along, you know, for 50 years now. And that's why the Mata Clark book, the historical documentation that we know is amazing, but you put 72.3, you know, sorry hip-hop, just on those numbers, we got you. So it's like, we predate the labeling or calling of such a thing, or the birth of such a thing. Not like it's competition, but once again, for me, I got a huge shout out in that book, and like, there you are, supported with ephemera that was also time dated to that era. So like, they've got me on film, they've got me in a physical form of like some book I signed, you know, that summer. So the storytelling of it is rich, and that's just my story. There's like 100 stories in there, you know, and that's why that room was packed and everyone was smiling, because for them too, it's like, you know, I can only imagine, like, I would hate to say this, but I believe it to be true, of like everybody from my school, from that New York City school, I feel, given my children, you know, the riches I perceive to be what makes it real, the important things in my life, and my success, probably the luckiest individual. Now, whether I don't want to argue about, yo, you're the greatest, no, fuck that. But just actually the luckiest, because whether my work has the quality or not, by comparison, my ability to transcend time, unlike my friends I'm talking about from back in the day who are locked in time. It's historically beautiful, but it's also, as Fat Five Freddy did with the Rap Tour song, Un Sale Histoire. It's more like it's something triste. It's more sad, actually. Although I love those old guys, I do understand how sad it is that you guys were of this generation, and because of it, you never were able to evolve, really, from it. Yet here I am, a kind of child of that too, navigated myself through time and space. How the fuck, you know, how did I do that? I don't know. The people I met, the Agneses, the Nigos, the James Lavelle's, you know, the people that stepped up in my world, you know, my loved ones most assuredly, but just say, like, I can't tell people sometimes, like, how did it happen? And what's next? You know, what's next is, like I said, I mean, I hope it's like a great painting. That would be very encouraging. But it's also like, if I have a 30-year plan now, like back in the day from 1970, I'm looking 30 years ahead to the year 2000, right? So now I'm in 2025, and I'm looking to, that'd be 2055, my friend. But I'll get there. So there's still time on that 30-year timeline to work it out in the next few years. Get through this decade, because technically, yeah, that's a long vision, that's a long lens, but I can see and focus at least till the end of this decade, like what my schedule is, what I'm trying to accomplish. And then it's time to start thinking about 2030 and beyond, which isn't really, you know, I mean, it's not that far away. So once again, it's a kind of forward thinker, and just keeping it in mind, not like, I mean, there's no urgency, but an awareness of a plan and a program that could kind of get me there. That's what I mean. I hope it could happen.
So we hope so, and maybe it's the time to tell you merci first.
Merci à vous.
Because merci to you, because I think you have many sounds, and in the room and in the world, we are one of your kids. Also, Agnès, you said you have mothers,
Yes, I do.
fathers. I think we have the same. You're one of our fathers. Agnès is one of our mothers. I went to the art looking at your work and others of your generation. I went to museums and galleries thanks to Agnès, and I learned how to create exhibitions thanks to you too, probably. So merci beaucoup. And I hope you will have other questions for all of you. So if you want to ask some questions, I will come to you with the mic, and maybe you will have
this gentleman right there with the pinstripes.
So.
Well, first of all, thanks to both of you for this very stimulating conversation. I have two very short but specific questions about your work. First of all, it is written pretty much everywhere that your names came both from the book Futura and from the Kubrick's movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I can't help but notice that in several of your early paintings from the 80s, there's these characters which is kind of a fetus-like characters in a bubble, and I was wondering if it was an explicit reference to the final scene of the movie, or if it was more of a subconscious thing. And for the second question, it is also well known that most of graffiti artists were and are still inspired by comic books. I wanted to know if you came across, back in the days, this magazine comic books named Heavy Metal, which came from...
Yes, Metal Heron, right? That was the French title of Heavy Metal, Metal Heron.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't pronounce it correctly, but yeah, I'm very familiar. Just for your last question there, at that time, I don't know if you remember, and I'm sure the French will remember, that in this era, there was this comic strip called Rank Xerox. You remember Rank Xerox? It was like this aggressive kind of figure. It was done by a gentleman named Liberatore. He was an Italian artist. Yeah, I mean, I'm not from the comic book world, but I appreciated good art, and obviously Heavy Metal was another level. Frazetta and that whole style, you know, was something really amazing. But that wasn't my influences. I wasn't looking at things like that. Your first question was about specifically the 2001 and Future Shock. Okay, no. Future Shock is Alvin Toffler's book. I knew his daughter, but that's another story. Nothing to do with the name or the book at all. They lived in New York, and everyone was like, oh, that's Alvin's daughter, Karen, whatever. You know, I don't remember her name. It was a long time ago. Because the name came to me in, you know, after Kubrick is 68. Once again, the identity comes in 1970, Futura 2000. Conscious of 2000 because I'm looking ahead to the future. 2001: A Space Odyssey. I didn't want to be Futura 2001 because people will be, oh, like the movie. And Futura was not just a popular typeface that we know, Paul Renner, but it was a car. It's the original Batman prototype was a Futura car. It's a blender, it's a sewing machine for Singer. So Futura was out there, not original at all. Just this combination. Also, some Spanish girl said, Futura, or excuse me, that was more Italian, but whatever. Just that it kind of sang to me. And I'm a 15-year-old kid. I'm more or less also wanting to write graffiti to get girls. So, you know, the initial hit was, you know, we're not rock stars, we're not cool like that, we don't even play instruments. But we're these mischievous, like, kind of deviants that are just cool by example, you know, like we just looked the part or we acted the part or something. So that was the thrill. But not Toffler, no. Futura, not in the Future Shock connectivity, no. Although I like the book, you know, I prefer Orwell to Toffler, but yeah, that's to each his own.
Thank you very much.
Merci, thank you.
Levez les mains.
Yeah, they clam up. They get a little like, oh man, I don't want to. There we go, my man.
Hey, Futura, how you doing, man?
I'm good, sir.
It's an honor to meet you first and
Thank
foremost.
you. Thanks for coming.
I started as a writer when I was 10 years old in 1980.
Wow,
And you're
okay.
one of the works that I used to watch a lot, so I would look at it. with
And where are you from originally?
California originally.
Okay, yeah.
I grew up in Puerto Rico and California. Both
Wow.
sides, yeah. Okay, I got a question though.
Sure.
Since around 12 when Planet Rock came out,
Yes.
and you're painting the walls and you're getting these little splatters of thin lines and what I see here and here.
Yeah.
I've been studying your work a lot. I always wondered, how did you dabble in that? How did that technique develop? You know, because when I started to try to bite your stuff,
Sure.
we would use like
Half full cans, a lot of pressure removed.
Yeah, have the pressure upside down.
Yeah,
take it
yeah,
out.
no, I mean, that is the way.
Yeah.
And that's the game we're playing with the can, right? Because it's you know, it's effectively got, you know, X amount of volume of all the ingredients, you know, one of which is the propellant, the other is the actual paint, and there's all the Fugazi products they put in. So it's just about, I mean, you know, painting for me is a lot of muscle memory because I'm doing the same gestures over and over and over again, and hopefully refining them in the process. But at the same time, like, it's just the hours spent knowing what the can's up to. Now, it's always gonna, you know, surprise me, because I'll think I'm at a level where, like, you know, well, I'm great, I got you. And I'm painting upside down as well. But then something will happen, you know, I don't know, and, you know, whatever, and I'm like, oh man, no, you know, like, not wanted. So then a lot of my work then too becomes like, well, you know, hey, you're on the abstract island. You know, it could be whatever you want it to be, right? Which is a kind of a cheap out, but it could be a lifesaver also. And then, you know, that mistake, as I said before, like that might just lead to something else. And then, hey, if you get to the point of no return, well, there is no return, right? Just buff the fucking thing and start over. But you try your best, right? Just to save a life, if you will, right? I'm gonna save this fucking guy. But yeah. Anyway.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, of course. Cali. No, I was going to say also about, so the thing about Cali that differs in it, you know, of course, is graffiti is regional, and thanks to the, you know, School of New York, you know, we came out with some books that stimulated the world, and every young kid around the planet that had access to, you know, moving trains or buses or trucks, or certainly static walls, started writing on shit. So that's kind of incredible, but once again, back to the beauty of having a whole car running in New York City, you know, and essentially the trains we painted, you know, me, Dondi, you know, the people who were like kind of in the know of it was like, oh, we only paint the 2 and the 5 train, not the other lines, because the 2 and the 5, you get more bang for your buck. It'll go from Brooklyn, Manhattan, and then the Bronx. So just from a visibility, longevity of that ride from beginning to end, you're covering more ground with that specific line than the other ones that are a bit shorter, if you will. So all of that was calculated, but you guys in Cali didn't have such a thing. You know, like, first of all, you can't walk around out there. There's no sense of real community. Yeah, there is, but it's all little houses and cul-de-sacs or whatever. It's territorial also. Like, you fucking can't go out of your hood, you know, for fear of whatever. And God forbid you actually were challenged to want to go do that. Now suddenly you become a potential victim and a target. You know, graffiti in New York, it wasn't like that. It wasn't territorial. Like, we agreed we're taking all of it collectively, right? There's no beef in here. I mean, some people would be like, yo, this is my spot. We'd be like, okay, here's some paint. Shut up, right? You buy your way in with paint or something, or you know, you'd be like, yo, you want to come into my spot, I need a dozen cans. Make it black, make it, you know, whatever. You could request your own colors. That's how it used to be, actually. Dondi could tell some kid, yo, go get me 12 cans of yellow right now. That kid would go get 3 of his other boys, they'd go steal that yellow paint, and they'd be back in a few hours with the paint. I mean, I seen it. I seen Dondi, you know, order people to go steal paint. That shit is crazy. You can't do that today, right? Oh, wow, what a world. What a fucked up world. You can't steal paint. But, I mean, look what they did to paint. You know, you go into paint now in an art store, it's all fucking locked up. I mean, it's very clear, like they're not allowing people access. You know, we used to back, I mean, there's so many ways to steal paint, you know. You gotta steal it like it's yours, right? That's the other thing. That's the way you steal shit. But we used to just bag up. You know, you walk in, you have a distraction. It could be a partner, or just some kid that really looks like a thug, or incorporate one of your white homies that's a little more straight collar, you know, white collar worker. Dude, I need you to go in there with this shopping bag. I'm gonna start a fight over here with my guy. And you know, so, but I was telling my wife recently, I don't like those stories of, you know, the criminality of it all back then. But, you know, it's this would be 1978, 79, you know, is it tolerable? No, it's not. Did we rob mom and pop stores? No, we did not. We robbed the big chains, right? We're not in there like trying to hurt people, but we were thieves, actually. I mean, spray paint in 1978 was $6.50 maybe a can. What, I gotta work an hour in that other job, right? To get that can? It's ridiculous. I need 25 cans. How's that gonna work? Yeah. No, well, you're always overstocked. You know, it's just redundancy. Anyway, I think they're trying to shut us down. I want to really thank you all because you've really been awesome. You know, you're just sitting here listening to me, but I got to cut it because. Thank you. And also, Elodie, I want to thank you so much for your wonderful introduction, but also for having us out here. And I hope Agnès will see some element of this. And once again, you know, it's people like her that at a moment in my life when I needed someone there, she was actually that person. And not sadly in any way, because, but she was the only person, right? Yeah, we are saying, and I love that metaphor or idea that people are angels in your life and are there to, you know, just help you on your path. And, you know, for me, I'll end with this one thing I've been saying. Yeah, I've been saying it for a while. And everyone's like, oh, you know, like, how can I do this? And what do I do to do that? And I always tell people, like, you know, in your journey of life or wherever you're doing at the moment, like, and we're gonna think about what you're gonna do moving forward. And let's just use my community. You're a fellow artist, and you know, you're trying to get on with your work. I would tell people that I could draw you a map of this entire, you know, like a reconnaissance map. Like, here's the terrain ahead, and there's this element, and beware of this thing over here, and yeah, I wouldn't go over there, that's quicksand or what have you. And even more detailed with like elevation and different kind of readings and markings. But I'm gonna hand back that map to the individual, and I'm gonna tell them, but I can't tell you now how to get anywhere. You have to find that path on your own, right? Because mine is completely, I mean, yeah, mine is like disappearing as I'm creating it, actually, right? Yeah, it's not a path that can really probably ever be followed. And therefore, I want to encourage people to get on with what you're feeling passionate about and follow your own path. And more than anything, and for me, speaking from those failure elements, when things aren't going well, don't despair. Just have belief in yourself and what it is you're trying to do. But at the same time, you got to be doing stuff. You know, it's not going to happen without your input. And that's why back to working the job, you know, a couple of people could be stimulating for a few months. You know, try it. Just bust your ass and get something done. And surprise yourself. Be like, holy fuck, I fucking busted this shit out. Like, I did a 2-week COVID quarantine in a hotel room, a self-inflicted prison, whatever, you know, just to get on with some business deal in Asia. And I felt, you know what, I need this in my life. It was almost like some cleansing for me, but I did it. And I walked out of there and I was like, fuck, all these lesser things that are Hasselhoff and oh my God, no. You can do it. It's just, it's like all up here, actually. You can psych yourself up to do anything. That's why I don't need medication. I need to smoke a joint right now, but I don't need medication.